Title: Soldier Stopped for Jogging While Black. Part 1, Just Another Morning. The sun had just broken over the rooftops of Oak Ridge, a peaceful suburban community nestled 30 miles outside of Atlanta. Birds chirped softly, sprinklers ticked rhythmically, and families still slept behind curtained windows. Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks laced up his running shoes on the front porch of his rented townhome. He checked his watch. 6:11 a.m. Perfect time for his daily 3-mile jog. He liked it early. No traffic, no noise. Just his thoughts and the rhythm of his breath. Elijah was 34, tall and broad-shouldered, with a tight fade haircut and the calm, quiet demeanor of a man who had seen too much to be easily shaken. A patch of Army Ranger ink peeked out beneath the sleeve of his t-shirt, one of many scars and symbols from 12 years of service, including 2 tours in Afghanistan and 1 in Iraq. He jogged every morning, no matter the weather, no matter the mood. It was his ritual, his therapy, his armor. This morning, like all others, Elijah stuck to his usual loop, down Maple Avenue, left on Hensley Lane, around the Oak Ridge Park, and back through Forest Circle. But this morning would not end like all others. As Elijah rounded the bend at Forest Circle, breathing steady, arms pumping, a police cruiser idled at the corner. He saw it from a distance and thought nothing of it. It wasn't uncommon to see local patrols in the neighborhood. Oak Ridge prided itself on being safe, and to them, that meant visibility. But when he passed the cruiser, the engine revved. Blue lights flashed behind him. He slowed, turned. The cruiser crept up beside him. 2 white officers stepped out. "Hey," the older one barked. "Stop right there." Elijah froze. "What's going on?" "We got reports of suspicious activity. You match the description." Elijah wiped sweat from his brow. "I'm just jogging, man." "ID?" He didn't carry one. Never needed it on a run. "It's at home. I live a block away." The second officer, younger, shifted nervously. "Can you prove that?" "I can walk you there. I'm Staff Sergeant Elijah Brooks, U.S. Army. I've got mail, lease, everything." The older cop stepped closer. "You raising your voice?" "No, sir, just explaining." "You look tense." "I'm running." "Turn around." "What?" "Turn. Around." Elijah's fist clenched, not in defiance, in heartbreak. But he turned. Cold metal clicked around his wrists. "Detained for questioning," the officer said flatly. "A jogger, a soldier, in cuffs." Within minutes, cell phones were out. A woman filming from her porch whispered into her phone, "He lives here. I've seen him running every day." Another neighbor muttered to her husband, "This is wrong. That's Elijah. He waved at me yesterday." Across the street, a teenage boy live-streamed the scene. "They just cuffed the guy for jogging. Seriously, what the hell?" The officers didn't notice, or didn't care. They placed Elijah in the back of the cruiser and began verifying his story. It took 9 minutes. 9 minutes to radio his name. 9 minutes to realize there were no reports, no calls, no suspects, no crime. 9 minutes to uncuff him and say, "You're free to go." No apology, just humiliation. Elijah didn't speak as he walked home. His arms ached, not from the cuffs, but from restraint. He had survived roadside bombs, firefights, ambushes, but nothing made his heart ache like being seen as a threat in his own country. His door was still ajar when he arrived. He had left it unlocked. Oak Ridge was supposed to be safe. He sat on the porch steps and buried his face in his hands. By noon, the video had gone viral. Black veteran cuffed while jogging in white suburb. News outlets picked it up. Interviews requests poured in. Activists tweeted his name. So did veterans, athletes, politicians. But Elijah didn't want a spotlight. He wanted answers. The police department issued a bland statement. Officers responded in good faith based on community concern. The situation was resolved without injury. We are reviewing procedures. No acknowledgement, no regret. But the community, they were on fire. The next evening, Elijah sat in his living room, debating whether to delete the hundreds of messages piling up on his phone. A knock came at the door. He opened it cautiously. 3 of his neighbors stood there, 2 women and an older man. "We're sorry," one said. "You've always been kind. We see you. And what happened? It's not okay." The older man, white and in his 70s, stepped forward. I was born here, he said, and I've never been prouder of Oak Ridge than I was watching the way our people stood up for you. You don't owe us anything, son, but if you want to speak, we'll stand beside you. Elijah nodded, quietly moved. The mayor called an emergency town hall. Hundreds packed the Oak Ridge Community Center. The police chief sat stiffly beside the two officers, both in uniform. Elijah sat in the front row, not as a guest, not as a suspect, but as a citizen. When his name was called to speak, the room stood. He took the mic, paused, then spoke. I served this country because I believed in it. I still do. But belief doesn't blind me. What happened to me wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a judgment, and not of who I am, but of what I look like. I'm not angry. I'm tired. Tired of being seen as a threat for jogging, for breathing, for existing. I don't want revenge. I want change. And I'm not asking alone. The crowd erupted in applause. Not loud, fierce, righteous, echoing. Within days, Chirker's Jogging, while black, trended nationally. But Elijah's name wasn't just a hashtag. It became a movement. Vets across the country jogged in his honor, posting videos in solidarity. Black soldiers, white soldiers, Latino, Asian, Indigenous. One sign read, I fought for this country. Don't make me fight for my humanity. Even the Army issued a rare public statement supporting him. The two officers involved were placed on leave. An investigation was opened. Oak Ridge began mandatory bias training for all civil servants. A week later, Elijah stood on a stage in downtown Atlanta at a peaceful rally. His voice was calm, but firm. I didn't ask for this spotlight, but maybe that's the point. Racism doesn't wait for invitations. It shows up unannounced, disguised as routine. But we're not going back. We're not staying silent. And we are not going to let fear write the rules of who belongs where. I'm not just running for me anymore. I'm running for everyone who's been stopped, questioned, silenced, for just being who they are. We're done being suspects. We're rising as symbols. Part 2. The Weight of the Spotlight. 3 days after the town hall, Elijah Brooks sat at his kitchen table, the soft glow of his laptop illuminating his face. The video of his speech had passed 2.1 million views. Emails flooded his inbox. Some were kind, some were hateful, but many came from young black men across the country. Thank you for saying what I couldn't. I've been stopped 3 times this year just walking home. You gave me courage to report my own incident. Elijah rubbed his temples. He hadn't asked for this. He just wanted to jog, to breathe, to exist like everyone else. But now people were looking to him, not just for strength, but for direction. CNN, MSNBC, even Good Morning America. They all wanted him. He ignored them at first. Then came a phone call from Captain Valerie Chen, his former commanding officer in the Army. Elijah, she said, her voice warm but steady, I've been watching everything. You handled it with more honor than most would. Thanks, ma'am, he said. You have a voice now. Use it. Speak for the ones who don't have the rank or the platform or the calm. I didn't sign up for this. Neither did Rosa Parks, but she sat down anyway. Silence, then Elijah nodded. All right, he said. Let's talk. On a Tuesday evening, Elijah sat across from a calm, thoughtful journalist in a modest Atlanta studio. No flash, he had requested. Just truth. Now, the interviewer leaned in. Mr. Brooks, what do you want people to take away from your story? Elijah looked straight into the camera. That I shouldn't be a story. I'm not special. I'm not rare. I'm just a man who went jogging and didn't expect to be stopped for existing. I'm not angry at individuals. I'm tired of a system that trains people to fear my skin more than my character. But if this moment leads to one less person getting cuffed for nothing, then maybe it's worth the wait. The older officer who detained Elijah, Sergeant Matthew Kerr, appeared on a local news segment the next day. He didn't apologize. Instead, he doubled down. We have a duty to respond to suspicions, and in that neighborhood, a man jogging at that hour, it's not common. He paused. I stand by my decision. We were protecting that community. The backlash was immediate. The Oak Ridge Police Department scrambled. Their Facebook page was overrun with comments. Protests reignited, but Elijah said nothing. Not yet. At home, Elijah sat with his phone buzzing nonstop. He wanted to disappear, go back to the base, or back to Afghanistan, where ironically, he said, he'd felt safer wearing camouflage than cotton. Vega, a friend from the army and now a lawyer in Atlanta, came by to check on him. "You okay?" she asked. He exhaled. "I feel like a symbol, not a person." She nodded. "That's what happens when you don't just survive injustice. You outlive it. People want to make you a flag. I don't want to be a flag. Then be a compass." One of the letters Elijah received came from a 12-year-old boy named Marcus. Handwritten, sloppy, full of heart. "Dear Mr. Brooks, I saw you on the news. I'm black too. Sometimes I get scared walking home. My mom says what happened to you wasn't fair, but you made me feel brave. Can you come talk to our school?" Elijah said yes. The visit changed him. Standing in front of 100 middle schoolers, he felt something he hadn't felt since before the incident. Hope. He told them about honor, about patience, and about how standing up doesn't mean standing alone. Afterward, Marcus hugged him and whispered, "I want to be like you." While public support for Elijah grew, something darker began brewing behind the scenes. A local police union group released a statement calling him an opportunist and accusing him of inflaming tensions for personal gain. A far-right blog called him a race agitator in uniform. And then came the death threat, a letter, no return address. "You think we don't see you? We do. Shut up or pay the price." Elijah gave it to the FBI, quietly, without making it public, but the message stayed with him, etched into the back of his mind. On the anniversary of the incident, 1 month later, Elijah organized something simple. The Freedom Run. No speeches, no politics, just a 3-mile group jog through Oak Ridge. He expected 20 people. Over 600 showed up. Black, white, young, old, veterans, moms with strollers, teens with hoodies, police officers, activists. Even the mayor joined. And halfway through the run, Elijah turned his head and saw a line of people stretching down the street, running in unity. Some wore t-shirts with his face. Others wore signs that read, "Running shouldn't require courage." After the run, Elijah sat on the curb, sipping water. A white man in his 40s approached cautiously. "Mind if I sit?" Elijah nodded. "I'm Tom. I live over on Hensley. I used to think stuff like this was blown out of proportion, that racism was just people making noise." Elijah said nothing. Tom swallowed. "But seeing what happened to you in my neighborhood, it changed something." He looked down. "I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner." Elijah finally looked at him. "You're speaking now." The Freedom Run inspired cities across the country to organize their own. Denver, Chicago, New York, Oakland. Some called it the Elijah Movement. He didn't like that. "This isn't about me," he said in a local interview. "It's about us, about what we tolerate, and what we're finally deciding not to tolerate anymore." But whether he liked it or not, he had become the spark, and now the flame was spreading. Part 3. The Fire and the Fuel. The days following the Freedom Run were a blur. Local and national headlines flooded in, from jogger to justice, the rise of Elijah Brooks. A community reclaims the streets. Army veteran story ignites movement for reform. But Elijah didn't read most of them. While the media made him a symbol, he was still just a man, waking up early, doing his push-ups, making oatmeal, staring at the front door before unlocking it, wondering what the day might bring. He never expected to inspire a movement, but he also couldn't turn away from it now. One morning, a black SUV pulled up to his house. Out stepped Congresswoman Elena Marquez, a rising progressive star in Washington. Small in stature, sharp as a razor. "Elijah Brooks," and she asked. "That's me. I flew in this morning. I want to hear your story from you, not filtered through TV." They sat on his porch, sipping coffee. "You didn't ask for this," she said. "No, ma'am. But now that you've got the mic, what would you change?" He didn't hesitate. "Make the justice system colorblind, make the police accountable, and teach people that freedom doesn't come with conditions on complexion." She nodded slowly. Would you ever consider taking this fight further? Politics, policy, legislation? Elijah laughed softly. I spent my life dodging bullets, not podiums. But now people follow you, she said, even from podiums. Not everyone was thrilled with Elijah's growing influence. Anonymous social media accounts began spreading doctored images. Elijah next to burning buildings, made to look like he was part of riots that never happened. He's not a hero, one account posted. He's a Marxist in fatigues. Right-wing pundits on cable news picked it up. He's dangerous, one host said. He wants to defund police and shame America. None of it was true, but it didn't matter. The more he stood up, the more they tried to cut him down. Elijah was invited to speak at Mount Calvary Baptist Church, one of the oldest black churches in Georgia. The sanctuary was packed. Generations filled the pews, kids on laps, veterans in uniform, grandmothers in pearl hats. He stood behind the pulpit, took a breath, and said, "My name is Elijah Brooks. I was born in Alabama, raised to believe you treat everyone with respect until they show you they don't deserve it. I went to war thinking I was fighting for freedom, but I came home and had to fight just to jog in peace. The truth is, racism didn't die. It just put on a different uniform. Sometimes it looks like a badge, sometimes a smile, sometimes a law." He paused. "But I'm not here to curse the darkness. I'm here to light a match. Because the more we speak, the less we hide. And I believe we're done hiding." The room erupted. 2 nights later, someone threw a brick through Elijah's living room window. Attached was a note, "Leave or be silenced." Police arrived within minutes, but Elijah didn't seem shocked. "Does this scare you?" an officer asked. "No," he said. "It confirms I'm doing something right." The next day, the neighbors rallied. One painted a giant mural of Elijah on the wall by the park, surrounded by doves and words like justice, dignity, and home. Others offered to help pay for repairs. An elderly white woman knocked on his door and handed him a pie. "We protect our own around here," she said. Then came the real turning point. Elijah, with the help of a pro bono civil rights law firm, filed a civil suit against the Oak Ridge Police Department for wrongful detainment, racial profiling, and emotional distress. The news exploded. Debates raged on national television. Some called it overdue. Others called it divisive. But Elijah only said one thing in his press statement. "This isn't just about me. It's about setting a precedent so the next black man doesn't have to be perfect, silent, or famous just to be left alone." Elijah's mother, Patricia, came to visit from Birmingham. She hadn't said much since the incident, but now, seeing his face on billboards and articles, she needed to look him in the eye. She stepped into his house, hugged him tightly, and said, "I'm proud of you, but I worry every night." "I know, Ma." She looked around. "You never asked for any of this, huh?" "No, but maybe I was made for it." She smiled sadly. "You were made to survive, but now you're teaching people how to stand." One evening, Elijah went for a walk. No cameras, no crowd, just him. As he passed the corner of the park, a small black boy stood holding an American flag and a homemade sign. "I can jog because of you." Elijah stopped, kneeled. "Where's your mom, little man?" "She's over there," he pointed. "She said I should say thank you." Elijah looked at the sign. It was made of notebook paper, crayons, tape. He smiled. "I'm proud of you," Elijah said. The boy whispered, "Are you a hero?" Elijah thought about it. "I'm just a neighbor, like you." A week later, a video surfaced from Michigan. A black man, also jogging, also stopped, also cuffed. Elijah reached out to him, listened to him cry, gave him advice. Then he tweeted, "Different city, same fear. We're not done yet." Inspired by Elijah's story, civil rights groups organized a march on Washington. He was asked to speak. As he stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, thousands gathered beneath him. He looked over the crowd, then spoke into the mic. 50 years ago, they marched for a dream. Today, we march for the right to jog, the right to breathe, the right to not be feared for our flesh. We don't want pity, we want equality. And we're not asking anymore. We're expecting." The crowd roared, and Elijah, he finally stood tall, not as a victim, but as a voice. Part 4. The Man Behind the Movement. Elijah Brooks didn't sleep much anymore. Even with blackout curtains and white noise, sleep came in waves. His mind wouldn't shut off. Not with everything happening. Not with his phone lighting up every 15 minutes with updates, threats, support messages, media requests, and legal briefings. He often found himself on the porch at 3 a.m., a hoodie over his head, mug of tea in hand, staring into the darkness. He was no longer just Elijah Brooks, the veteran who got stopped while jogging. He had become the voice, the face, the fire. And some days he wondered if that fire would eventually burn him alive. The civil case against the Oak Ridge Police Department was officially underway. Depositions, evidence, body cam footage, testimonies. Elijah was advised not to speak publicly about it anymore. But that didn't stop the noise. The two officers involved had retained private attorneys and were countersuing for defamation and emotional damage. Their union accused Elijah of weaponizing public opinion. The narrative began to split. Some called him a truth teller. Others called him a troublemaker. The media twisted both. Not everyone stuck around. Old Army friends stopped responding. A former roommate posted on Facebook, "I served with Elijah. Good guy, but he's gone full social justice warrior. Sad to see." Even some of his neighbors in Oak Ridge kept their distance now, afraid of the cameras, the press, the drama. Elijah understood, but it didn't stop the sting. At one point, he asked Vega bluntly, "Am I doing the right thing, or am I just making everything worse?" Vega looked at him carefully. "You're pulling a knife out of the wound. It's going to hurt before it heals." In the span of 2 weeks, Elijah received one phone call from the governor's office, offering to meet off the record. A threat from a neo-Nazi website listing his home address. A call from a civil rights museum asking to include his shoes from the Freedom Run in an exhibit. He laughed at the irony. One day they threaten to erase you. The next they want to preserve you. One evening, Elijah got a message from an unexpected name. Chief Bennett, the newly appointed police chief of Oak Ridge, after the previous one resigned under pressure. The message was short. "We may not agree on everything, but I believe in conversation. Dinner?" Elijah hesitated for days before responding, but he said yes. They met at a small restaurant on the edge of the city. No press. No cameras, just two men in plain clothes. Chief Bennett was black, late 40s, with a quiet, worn confidence. They ordered coffee and southern fried catfish. For the first 5 minutes, they said nothing. Then Bennett broke the silence. "You're not wrong," he said, "about what happened, about the system, about how much it hurts." "I didn't think you'd say that," Elijah replied. "I've been in uniform for 25 years. I've watched good cops stay silent and bad cops get promoted. It eats at you." Elijah sipped his drink. "So what now?" Bennett leaned in. "We fix it from the inside, together." Weeks later, a new initiative was announced. The Elijah Brooks Community Integrity Project, a joint venture between the city and the police department. The goal? To create open forums between officers and citizens, to hold de-escalation workshops, to recruit more diverse candidates into the academy, to build transparency protocols that meant something. The program was met with mixed responses. Some saw it as a victory, others saw it as a betrayal. At the first officer training under the new program, Elijah stood before a room full of cops. Some scowled, some looked away. One muttered under his breath, "Here comes the lecture." Elijah ignored it. "I'm not here to make you feel bad," he said. "I'm here to remind you why you signed up in the first place. Protect and serve doesn't mean protect your own. It means protect your community, even when it challenges you." One officer stood up. "What do you know about being a cop?" "I don't," Elijah said, "but I know what it feels like to be afraid of one." Silence. And in that silence, someone clapped. Then another. Then the room. Elijah received a call from a young recruit a few days later. "I'm biracial," the man said. "I joined the force to make it better. I was ready to quit after the first year. Then I saw you speak. You gave me a reason to stay." Elijah thanked him, then hung up and cried, not out of sadness, but because, for once, he believed it might all be working. After 6 months of depositions, legal sparring, and media noise, the Oak Ridge PD settled the civil lawsuit. They agreed to pay damages, fund additional training, and publicly acknowledged that the stop had violated Elijah's civil rights. It wasn't everything, but it was something. Elijah stood outside the courthouse. Reporters swarmed. "What's next?" one asked. He looked into the camera. "We keep running, not away from the pain, but toward the solution." Part 5. Beyond the badge. The legal settlement changed things. It wasn't just the money. Elijah barely touched it. It was the admission, a rare public acknowledgement that he had been wronged, that what happened that morning on his jog had not been a misunderstanding, but a failure. It was a crack in the wall, and Elijah planned to make that crack wider. 1 week after the lawsuit settled, Elijah received a letter from the Department of Veterans Affairs. They were awarding him the Veterans Justice Medal, a newly created civilian honor recognizing veterans who had made significant contributions to justice reform. He was stunned. "I never asked for this," he told the committee during the virtual ceremony. "You didn't have to," the chair replied. "You earned it." Elijah made a quiet trip to Fort Benning, where he had trained and deployed from. He didn't tell the press. He just wanted to walk the grounds, to remember the man he had been before all this began. An old sergeant recognized him. "Didn't expect to see you back here," he said. "I didn't expect to come back," Elijah replied. The sergeant clapped a hand on his shoulder. "You always were one of the good ones. I mean that." It was one of the few times Elijah didn't flinch at the phrase. One night, Elijah was walking home from a community meeting when he noticed a car trailing slowly behind him. At first, he brushed it off. Then it turned off its headlights. He turned into a gas station, heart racing. The car followed. He quickly ducked inside the store. After a tense minute, the car pulled away. He filed a report. Nothing came of it. That night, he called Vega. "I think I need security. You've needed it for months," she said. In the midst of all the movement, Elijah missed a call. It was from his father's nurse. By the time he called back, it was too late. His father, retired mechanic, Sunday churchgoer, the man who taught him how to run and when to stop, had passed in his sleep. Heart failure. Elijah flew to Birmingham the next day. He stood beside the casket, surrounded by cousins and old neighbors, who all kept saying, "He would have been so proud." Elijah nodded, but all he felt was guilt. After the funeral, his aunt handed him a folded envelope. "It's from your daddy. He wrote it weeks ago. Said to give it to you when you're tired." The letter was short. "Son, I see you. I hear you. And I know this burden ain't light. But you were always the one to keep running, even when the road cracked under you. Don't let the world convince you that your fight is too loud. You are the quiet thunder I always believed in. Love you, Dad." Elijah wept for the first time in months. After weeks of media cycles, legal victories, and activism, Elijah took a step back. He turned down interviews, stopped posting on social media. He needed time, and he needed to figure out what came next. It came one evening, sitting on the bench where the Freedom Run had started. A woman sat next to him. She was Latina, in her 40s, nervous. "I've been watching you," she said. "In a good way." He smiled. "That's a relief. My son, he's scared of the police. He's 12. Can't sleep. Keeps saying he doesn't want to end up like Elijah Brooks. I didn't know how to tell him you were one of the good guys." Elijah was quiet. Then he said, "Maybe I should talk to him." And in that moment, an idea was born. With funding from local organizations and national donors, Elijah launched the Elijah Project, a mentorship and youth resilience program. Its mission: to bridge the gap between young people of color and public safety through school visits, conflict resolution workshops, mental health support, storytelling events, art and activism programs. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't political, but it was real. Chief Bennett invited Elijah back to Oak Ridge's academy training. This time he wasn't there to lecture. He was there to listen. He sat in a circle with 15 new recruits, all under 30, all nervous, all eyes on him. "Why'd you join?" Elijah asked each of them. The answers varied. "To protect people. To do better than the cops in my neighborhood. To be a part of something that mattered." He smiled. "Then remember this," he said. "The badge doesn't give you power. It gives you a choice. You choose whether that power serves people or silences them." Months passed. The noise died down. But Elijah didn't. He was still speaking, teaching, mentoring, running, still being stopped for photos, still getting letters from kids, still waking up at 5:45 a.m. and lacing up his shoes. Only now when he jogged, people jogged with him. A neighbor, a student, a fellow vet, a police officer. Sometimes no one said a word. Sometimes that was the most powerful thing of all. Part 6. The Call to Lead. It had been almost a year since the morning jog that changed everything. Elijah Brooks had gone from an Army veteran trying to find peace in a quiet neighborhood, to a national figure, to a voice, to a symbol. But even symbols have to make choices. The call came on a rainy Thursday. A staffer from the office of Senator Karen Mitchell, a progressive voice in Washington, asked Elijah if he would consider flying to D.C. for a private discussion on public safety reform. "I'm not a politician," Elijah said. "That's exactly why we're calling you," the staffer replied. Elijah arrived in the Capitol 2 days later. He wasn't used to the marble, the cameras, the polished shoes and practiced smiles. It felt like another world. But he walked through it with quiet confidence. Senator Mitchell greeted him with a firm handshake. "Elijah," she said, "you're the story people talk about behind closed doors because they can't spin it, they can't ignore it, and they can't believe it happened in safe America." They sat in a quiet room behind the chamber floor. "You've seen what happens when change is forced from the outside," she said. "We need people like you on the inside." "What are you asking me?" Elijah asked. She leaned forward. "I'm asking if you'd ever consider public service, elected office, leadership, not just protest, policy." Back at home, Elijah sat with the question. He hadn't chased fame. He'd resisted every label, but now people were asking if he'd become the very thing he once distrusted. He called Vega. "What do you think?" he asked. "I think if you don't lead, someone who doesn't care will." "What if I'm not ready?" Vega laughed softly. "Elijah, you've been leading since the day they tried to silence you, and you spoke anyway." Elijah talked to mentors, friends, old commanders. Most said yes, but one friend, Marcus, from basic training, was blunt. "Just don't lose yourself, man. You're real. Don't let them turn you into a brand." That night, Elijah took a run. No cameras, no supporters, just him. With every step, he asked himself, am I running from it or toward it? 2 weeks later, standing on the steps of the Oak Ridge Civic Center, Elijah faced a crowd of reporters. He took a deep breath and said, "I never imagined I'd be standing here. I'm not a politician. I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've doubted myself. I've questioned everything. But I know this. Silence is no longer an option. If the system is broken, we don't walk away. We walk in and rebuild it." So today, I'm announcing my candidacy for state representative. The crowd erupted. Flashbulbs went off. But Elijah only heard the voice of his father in his head. "You're the quiet thunder I always believed in." Elijah's campaign was grassroots. No PACs, no million-dollar donors, just people. Volunteers, students, veterans, teachers, parents, knocking on doors, making calls, handing out flyers. His slogan was simple: justice for all, no exceptions. But it wasn't all applause. His opponent, a wealthy incumbent, painted him as angry, divisive, anti-police. One commercial aired on local TV. "Do you want your children protected by someone who doesn't trust the badge?" Elijah's team prepared a counterattack. He told them not to air it. "Let's stay honest," he said. "People are watching, not just what I say, but how I carry it." At the town hall debate, the moderator asked, "Mr. Brooks, do you believe most police are racist?" Elijah didn't blink. "I believe most police are undertrained, overpressured, and forced into roles they're not prepared for. I don't hate cops. I hate injustice. And I believe good officers should hate it too." The room was quiet. Then one woman in the back stood and clapped. Then another, and another. Elijah was in his campaign office one evening when someone knocked on the glass. It was Marcus, the boy who had written to him nearly a year ago. Now 13, taller, glasses on. "I just wanted to say I'm proud of you," he said. "You helped me," Elijah said. "You reminded me what I was fighting for." Marcus grinned. "Well, now I'm running for class president. Guess I got inspired." They laughed. The night before the election, Elijah jogged the old route through Oak Ridge, the same one where it all began. This time, no sirens, no blue lights, just street lamps and still air. He stopped at the corner where he was once handcuffed, placed his hand on the ground, not for anger, but for gratitude. He had turned pain into purpose, and now it was up to the people. The next evening, surrounded by friends, volunteers, and family, Elijah watched the election returns come in. Precinct after precinct reported. It was close. Too close. Then finally, Oak Ridge. The numbers appeared on screen. Elijah Brooks, 51.2% incumbent, 48.8%. The room erupted. People cried, cheered, embraced. Elijah stood still, heart pounding. Vega whispered, "You won." He nodded slowly, then smiled. Now the real work begins. Part 7, Inside the System. The Georgia State Capitol building looked different when you were walking in as an elected official. Elijah Brooks wore a plain dark blue suit, a flag pin on his lapel, and his father's watch on his wrist. He didn't hire a PR team. He didn't rehearse a speech. He just showed up, because showing up for him had always been the most radical thing he could do. The halls were polished, the portraits high, and the handshakes stiff. Some lawmakers welcomed him with smiles. Others avoided eye contact. A few offered fake politeness, the kind that says, "I know who you are, and I'm not thrilled about it." In his office, a modest room with beige walls and a window view of a parking lot, Elijah sat quietly at his desk and unpacked only two things: a photo of his father, a folded newspaper from the day after his arrest, framed, "Black veteran detained while jogging." He put it right behind his chair. A reminder, a compass. Elijah wasted no time. He introduced a community policing accountability bill within his first 2 weeks, aiming to require annual implicit bias training, transparent citizen review boards, a statewide public police conduct database. He called it the Right to Move Act. The committee scoffed. "We've already got rules," one legislator said. "And we already got trauma," Elijah replied. "I'm here to close the gap." During floor debates, his colleagues tried to paint him as an extremist. "So, Representative Brooks, do you believe all police are bad?" He stood calm and clear. "No, but I believe systems protect power more than people. I believe justice shouldn't come down to the color of your skin or the zip code you live in. And I believe a good cop shouldn't be afraid of accountability. They should demand it." Some clapped, others whispered, but no one could say he didn't speak truth. Elijah joined a small bipartisan veteran caucus. At first, meetings were awkward. He was the only black member, the only one who had been racially profiled after serving. But slowly, his stories cracked their shells. At one session, a Republican lawmaker from rural Georgia pulled him aside. "My brother served. He was stopped once in our own county. Same thing you went through. I didn't get it until now." "Then maybe we're getting somewhere," Elijah said. Even as a legislator, Elijah kept his Friday nights open for town halls. No cameras, just folding chairs, microphones, and people. At one meeting, a woman stood up and said, "My son's in juvie for stealing a bike. His white friend did the same thing and got a warning." Elijah nodded. "Tell me your son's name. I'll call the DA." He meant it, and he followed through. Change didn't always come from law. Sometimes it came from listening. 3 months into his term, Elijah received a package with no return address. Inside, a toy noose and a note that said, "You forgot your place." He handed it over to security. But later that night, as he sat alone in his apartment, he stared at the skyline and whispered, "You think fear is new to me?" Then he turned on the porch light and kept it on. By mid-session, Elijah's bill was gaining traction. After weeks of negotiations, he secured co-sponsorship from 3 swing district legislators, including one former police chief. "I hated you when I saw that video," the chief told him, "but I couldn't stop thinking about it." Then my granddaughter said, "Why did they arrest him if he didn't do anything wrong?" And I had no answer. Elijah didn't smile. He just nodded. Sometimes it takes a child to teach a grown man justice. Elijah visited a middle school in Atlanta, part of a youth civic program. One 8th grader asked him, "What do you do when no one listens?" He replied, "You speak anyway, and when your voice gets tired, you teach others how to use theirs. After months of committee rewrites, protests, and amendments, the Right to Move Act passed the State House by 3 votes. It wasn't everything he wanted, but it was a start. And sometimes a start is louder than a finish. At the press conference, a reporter asked, "How does it feel, Representative Brooks, to go from detainee to lawmaker?" He paused, then said, "I didn't change. The world just started catching up." Part 8. The Higher You Rise. Elijah Brooks had walked through fire before, but the fire inside the Georgia State Senate burned differently. It wasn't obvious. It didn't scream or threaten. It smiled. It stalled. It rewrote lines in invisible ink. And after his historic bill passed the House, it arrived in the Senate like a stranger with no invitation. The committee chair, a senator with 30 years in office and 1,000 ways to say no, buried the bill in further review. Wetshorn, no timeline, no promises, just silence. Elijah had spent his life avoiding political games, but now he was forced to learn them. He met with aides, tracked votes, sat in offices listening to stories about optics, donor response, and electability. At one point, a senator leaned in and said, "If you want to last here, you need to choose your battles." Elijah leaned back. "I already did. That's why I'm here." The delay didn't go unnoticed. Activists reignited protests. Voters flooded senators with calls. A viral hashtag returned, "Let us move." At a press event, Elijah stood outside the Capitol steps. Every day this bill sits in silence is another day a person of color wonders if jogging, driving, or existing will cost them their dignity or their life. We won't wait forever, and we won't forget. While Elijah fought in the Capitol, things back in Oak Ridge started unraveling. The mayor who once supported him began facing backlash from police unions. Local businesses, pressured by conservative donors, started distancing themselves from the Elijah Project. Even the mural of him by the park was vandalized, red paint across his face with the words, "Traitor." When Elijah returned home, neighbors watched quietly from their windows. Some waved, others didn't. He felt it, the warmth shrinking, the spotlight growing colder. One night, Elijah drove to Birmingham to see his mother. They sat on the porch, the air thick with southern summer and silence. "You look tired," she said. "I am." "You thinking of quitting?" He shook his head. "I'm thinking of surviving." She looked at him, full of the kind of strength only mothers carry. "You weren't raised to survive small. You were raised to survive loud." Then she placed her hand on his. "Even if they stop clapping, keep going." 2 weeks later, Elijah got word. The Senate had quietly killed his bill in committee. No vote, no hearing, just gone. His staff was furious. Protesters were outraged. Reporters cornered him on the Capitol steps. "What now?" Elijah took a deep breath. "They thought if they buried this bill in silence, it would stay dead. But we're not grieving. We're organizing. The movement isn't a piece of legislation. The movement is us." Rather than retreat, Elijah launched a new initiative, the Georgia Justice Tour, a mobile town hall campaign traveling to every major city and rural county in the state. The goal? To educate, listen, and register 50,000 new voters. And it worked. People came by the hundreds. Churches opened their doors. Libraries cleared space. Schools offered auditoriums. Elijah didn't lecture. He listened. At one stop, a teenager said, "I thought politics was for old rich people. You made it real." At another, a retired white farmer admitted, "I never knew how scared some of y'all feel every day. You opened my eyes." In Savannah, Elijah sat down with a 9-year-old girl named Talia. She had seen the mural of him in Atlanta. She wore a shirt that said, "I run because he did." "Are you a superhero?" she asked. He smiled. "No, baby. I'm just somebody who didn't stop running when they told me to." She hugged him, and for a moment, the weight lifted. With momentum rising, pressure on the Senate increased. Other lawmakers began drafting similar bills based on Elijah's original proposal. Even some skeptics began to reconsider. The lieutenant governor, who once avoided Elijah, called for a meeting. "We can't keep pretending the system's fine," he admitted. "But if you want change, you'll have to compromise." I'm willing, Elijah said, as long as we don't compromise the people we serve. 1 year to the day after his wrongful detainment, Elijah returned to the same intersection in Oak Ridge. This time, no cuffs, no cops, just him and a new street sign, renamed by the city council. It read, Elijah Brooks Way. A crowd gathered, quiet, respectful. Elijah took the mic. I was stopped here for running. Today I stopped here to remind you, we're still moving. Not every fight ends in victory, but every step we take leaves a trail for someone else to follow. Keep walking, keep fighting, keep loving this country enough to make it better. Part 9. After the applause. The spotlight fades faster than anyone expects. 1 month after the Elijah Brooks Way Street sign was unveiled, headlines moved on. New scandals, new elections, new outrage. But Elijah stayed. He still walked the halls of the Capitol. He still met with students. He still returned calls from mothers who were scared for their sons. But now he did it with something else in his heart. Stillness. Not peace. Not yet. But a deeper understanding that real change doesn't come in cheers. It comes in consistency. One afternoon, Elijah received a handwritten letter. It came from Officer Matthew Kerr, the man who had handcuffed him on that fateful morning, now retired. The envelope was plain. No return address. Inside, Mr. Brooks. You don't know this, but I resigned 6 months after the incident. Not because of pressure, but because I started to see the cracks. Not just in the system, in myself. I watched your interviews. I saw how you never demonized me. You could have. Maybe you should have. But you didn't. I'm sorry, I mean that. You taught me something no training ever did. I hope that counts for something. MK Elijah folded the letter and placed it in the same frame as the newspaper. At a panel in Atlanta, Elijah sat beside city leaders, journalists, and professors. The moderator asked, "Has America changed in the year since your story broke?" Elijah didn't answer right away. Then he said, "America doesn't change in years. It changes in generations. But I've seen something more important than change. I've seen the beginning of awareness. We can't heal what we don't name. And now finally we're naming it." One evening, Elijah sat alone in his campaign office. Poll numbers for his re-election were dropping. Voter fatigue, pushback from conservatives, frustration from young progressives who wanted faster change. He stared at the board covered in sticky notes and strategy papers. The thought crept in. What if this is where it ends? What if everything he built faded? What if the system swallowed him like it had swallowed so many before? Just as he was about to shut the office down for the night, the door creaked open. It was Marcus again, now 14, taller, confident. He wore a hoodie that said, "Future Senator." "You still working?" Marcus asked. "Trying to," Elijah replied. "You look tired." Elijah chuckled. "That obvious?" Marcus sat across from him. "You told me once to keep going, even when no one clapped." Elijah nodded. "I still remember," Marcus added, "every word." That moment reminded Elijah, this was the win. Not the polls, not the bills, the kid who still believed. The following week, Elijah was honored at a National Veterans Gala. The room was filled with former generals, decorated officers, and dignitaries. But Elijah's name was the loudest applause of the night. They gave him the Citizens Valor Medal for defending freedom through civic courage. During his speech, he said, "I've worn many uniforms, but the most dangerous thing I've ever worn was my skin. And yet I'm still here, still serving. Not because I love conflict, but because I love this country enough to argue with it until it gets better." Back home, his mother cooked dinner. Just the two of them. Fried chicken, collard greens, cornbread, comfort food. "I saw your speech," she said. He smiled. "Yeah? You didn't flinch." "I was terrified." She reached for his hand. Courage isn't the absence of fear. It's holding fear's hand and walking anyway. One night, Elijah walked through the city by himself. No speeches, no cameras, just a slow walk. At one point, a little girl rode her bike past him, stopped, and turned. "Hey, you're that guy," she said. "What guy?" "The one who ran and didn't stop." He smiled. "That's me." She nodded. Cool. Then pedaled off. And in that moment, Elijah felt something new. Not victory, not sorrow. Legacy. As his first term neared its end, Elijah met with his team. I might not run again, he told them. Gasps, protests. Why? Vega asked. Because I think I've taken it as far as I can from here, and now it's someone else's turn. But who could carry it like you? Someone asked. Elijah smiled. Someone I haven't met yet, or someone I already have. That's how movements grow. Part 10. The Legacy. You leave the campaign office was quieter now. No phones ringing, no volunteers stuffing envelopes, no late-night pizza boxes on desks. Just Elijah, standing in the middle of it all, holding a box of framed photos. Photos of rallies, of classrooms, of Marcus, and of that day, the day he stood on the street corner in cuffs, sweat-soaked and speechless. The day that started it all. He took the frame down from the wall and exhaled. He didn't call it a farewell, just a thank you. They gathered in the park. Hundreds of supporters, old and young, every race, every faith, some in wheelchairs, others in uniforms. Elijah walked to the mic. I came into this with no plan, just pain. I was stopped for running, and I ran right into a calling. I've carried a lot these last few years, some of it heavy, some of it holy. But the greatest thing I've carried is your trust. He looked over the crowd, familiar faces, and new ones he'd never seen. If I've taught you anything, I hope it's this. Your voice matters. Your story matters. Your presence in this world is an act of defiance and grace. I'm not going away. I'm just stepping aside, so you can step forward. Months later, a new representative was sworn into his old seat. Andrea Carter, 27, Black, former youth counselor, and Elijah's mentee through the Elijah Project. She won in a landslide. In her acceptance speech, she said, I run because Elijah ran, and now I get to lead because he refused to stop. Elijah watched from the back of the chamber. No press, no attention, just a quiet, proud smile. Elijah didn't stop running. Every morning before the sun rose, he still laced his shoes. Only now others ran with him. Kids from the neighborhood, former protesters turned teachers, even off-duty cops. They called it the Quiet Run, a community tradition, no signs, no slogans, just feet on pavement and hearts in rhythm. The mural in Oak Ridge had once been vandalized. Now it had been restored, bigger, brighter, surrounded by the faces of dozens of others who joined the movement, and at the center, Elijah. Not with fists raised, but simply running. Free. The Smithsonian's National Museum of African American History and Culture launched a new exhibit, Everyday Resistance, the Elijah Brooks Story. On display, the shoes he wore during the Freedom Run, the notebook where he drafted his first bill, a copy of the letter from Officer Kerr, and a photo of him hugging Marcus. Beneath it, a single plaque read, he jogged so we could walk forward. Years later, Elijah, now in his early 40s, received a letter. It was from Marcus, now 18 and about to start college. Dear Mr. Brooks, I don't know if you remember what you told me that day in your office. Even if they stop clapping, keep going. I just wanted you to know. I never stopped. I'm studying political science, planning to run for city council someday. I want to help kids like me, like we were. Thank you for running when it mattered. Now it's our turn. Elijah read the letter under the same porch light he once turned on in fear. Now it just stayed on, all the time. One early morning, Elijah jogged alone again through Oak Ridge. He passed the new mural, the street that bore his name. No sirens, no staring, just peace. As he neared the final turn, he saw a group of kids jogging toward him, led by Marcus. They passed each other. Elijah smiled. Marcus nodded, and neither said a word, because they didn't need to. Elijah Brooks was never trying to change the world. He just wanted to live in it fully, to jog, to breathe, to be. And by fighting for that simple right, he gave others the courage to demand it too. He didn't start the movement, but he reminded us all. The real power isn't in the spotlight. It's in the quiet, stubborn act of choosing not to stop, especially when the world tells you to. The Rothfriedens